All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Tommy Joyner Radio Show, the Productized Me edition. Today, I've got a special guest and one of my homies that I actually met at the beginning of this year in Bali, Indonesia. Danny Carlson coming at me live from Bali. He's actually still there, which is awesome. Great place to be. Danny is the owner and operator of Kenji ROI, which is a listing creation and it's basically a listing creation and marketing service company for Amazon resellers. You can probably articulate that a little better than I just did. But Danny, welcome, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
Oh, glad to chat, man. I always enjoy our chats and, just getting nerdy when it comes to, productizing these kind of businesses and stuff like that. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're all trying to do, right?
Yeah, man, absolutely. I think this episode is going to be this episode in particular is going to be packed full of value because Danny's someone that's in the trenches. He's actually implementing a lot of stuff that we talk about at the exact same time. So for all the listeners out there, I think this is going to be a really good one. Danny, if you wouldn't mind, man, starting off, just talk a little bit more about what Kenji is and it does for people, and specifically if you could talk about some of the package service offerings that you have set up for folks. That would be awesome, and then we'll get more into some of the productized nature of your business as we go.
Yeah, so the real core of the business is packages of listing optimization for brands to sell on Amazon. So an example, our most popular one is a photography package. It's just all the images that you need for an Amazon listing. And it's a very specific, exactly 10 images of a certain breakdown, has specifically, 3 of these type of images, 3 of another type of images. It's quite systematized. We also do listing copywriting. Again, just like very specific. We don't offer like, hey, I only need this piece of the listing. It's either the entire listing or it's none of the listing. And then video, and then there's some other graphic things related to Amazon that we do there. The other side is marketing management. And again, we specifically only offer one package of that. It's Facebook ads with Facebook Messenger bots. So kind of similar to email, but with Facebook Messenger. We don't offer just like whatever Facebook ad strategies they want. We only offer that Facebook ad strategy.
So that's really interesting. So like 2 questions. Like one, how long did it take you to iterate through whatever you started doing when you started offering services and selling people things to get these packages dialed in? And then the second point, which just came up to me, which is a big question that people have a lot, is like a lot of people struggle with the idea of figuring out how to productize anything to do with paid media. So if you could talk a little bit more about how you've done that as well, that would be dope.
Yeah, so I guess I was pretty lucky. We started off fairly productized. I mean, in the beginning, you were definitely taking on a lot more custom stuff if people did ask for it. But we cut that off fairly early, which I'm glad about. But luckily, I'd kind of heard that productizing your services is the way to go. And so we just offer specific packages, which cuts out a lot of the BS from that. We've recently been even just cutting it down even further and just reducing the amount of packages that we have to make it just even more systematized and productized. And when it comes to the marketing management side of things, that definitely is trickier to provide productized packages for, just because it's probably a little bit more nuanced. There's more kind of variables when it comes to that. But we're just very specific with, we have 2 objectives per month. And, we can decide on what those are, but it gets rid of the creep of like, hey, like we want to accomplish these 5 things in the month, or like having to switch around all the time. It's like, hey, you get objective 1, like we want to increase the views on this specific product. Maybe objective 2 is we're going to be launching a new product and we're going to help that new product rank. And the setup process too, if it's the first month with us, there is a very specific setup process that goes through of getting their bot set up with the welcome flows and just kind of some basic housekeeping things. And that's all just very outlined, so it's very clear what they're getting in the package. Another part of that is that it's a 2-month engagement to start. They can't just purchase 1 month to start. They have to purchase the 2-month engagement and then month to month from there, because we have a setup process that's involved with that. So all of that just really cuts down on, negotiation, trying to like create custom proposals. Proposals can eat just way too much time trying to just like suit the exact needs of everyone. So we just kind of found what, just something that works well for us, but also is going to cater to the needs of our clients. And then just, that's what we offer. If you don't like it, then we're not going to modify it.
That's awesome, man. So for all the listeners out there that have taken some tidbits of information from the stuff that we've done in the past, one thing that Danny just said is like he doesn't cater to different customers. I mean, he created his offer and he sells that exact offer. So it's slightly customizable depending on the person because there's different companies involved with who you're working with. But in terms of the services and the process that he goes through, that doesn't change. So one thing that's really important when you're either, I think there's like two steps to this as well. And there's like different versions of what a productized service really is. I think a true productized service is usually just one thing. And then there's packaged services. Danny seems to be a little bit of a hybrid right now in terms of what he offers, but he's obviously done a really good job packaging his services, which I think is the first step towards ultimate productization, which makes your life a lot easier. So that being said, Danny, one of the things that you said was you require a 2-month minimum for one of the packages that you sell. Why did you implement that, and how has that helped in terms of customer retention?
Well, for a few reasons. One of them being is with this particular offering, there is a setup period where it takes us about 2 weeks to get everything set up and then actually get campaigns on Facebook ads running. So the first month is just not going to be seeing the same results as second month. And in order for us to get good results, we really need 2 months to get everything going. And it just wouldn't look good to the client if they pay for 1 month and they see the metrics based on like 2 weeks of running ads, right? And it also averages out the whole setup fee. Like a lot of agencies, they get around this problem by just charging, a one-time setup fee or something like that. This way, we kind of offer that benefit to the client. Hey, if you commit to us for 2 months, then we will not charge you a setup fee. So that's just our way of dealing with that kind of problem.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And I think that's another big takeaway throughout a lot of the conversations that I've had with people that I think is really helpful. Just to wrap up that question, like if you were offered to give some advice to someone looking to productize their paid media agency in at least a little bit of a way that you have, like what would be the most important things for them to keep in mind?
The most important things, I mean, it is a little bit trickier. It probably will take a little bit of trial and error. One of the most important things is what I just mentioned, is like how to get past that setup kind of phase there.
Yep.
And just really being honest with like how long is the setup going to take, and how long is it going to take for you to prove the results to your client so that they're likely to continue the retainer with you, right? And just making that part of your decision-making process, because that is very important. You want to retain your clients, right? The second piece of that is just being ultra clear with what the deliverables are.
Yeah.
And like putting specific numbers to all of those things too, because just even small things like, ad creatives or something like that, if the client's expectations are kind of ballooned out of proportion, then it's just not going to work out, right? The more things you can have defined in that contract and just productize, and like, hey, we will, I don't know, this is a random example, is we will manage, 17 ads for your company or something like that. If that's defined and that's a package, then if someone comes and asks for 25, then it's just, no, this is the way we do it. And as long as you have good reasons for that, I think that's great. But I mean, I think the biggest thing is really just defining the package as accurately and specifically as you possibly can.
Awesome. Yeah. So defining the package as accurately and as accurately as you can in terms of how you present that to your customers, and then setting expectations and sort of creating clear boundaries. I really like that. one of the biggest hurdles that a lot of people have in terms of building a product is you have your direct team members and you work with, like as your core group. But then for some of the services that you offer, we were talking a little bit about this before we got on the call. It's there's contractors. So my previous business contract, our content pros, we had a bunch of independent contractors as the writers and the editors that we hired. And it was always a pain at first to figure out a process to set up and build a writing team so that we weren't managing everything and missing 3 or 4 writers every time, and that we had enough writers to pull from that were suitable for the work that we were bringing on. Can you talk a little bit about how you built the for your independent contractors and what exactly they do and what part of the package they fit into?
Yeah, so this is something I'm really excited about that we just got operational a little while ago. We're still kind of getting the final thing systematized with this, but we have a new system for hiring and vetting and then reaching out to photography contractors, because we do have full-time photographers in Vancouver, but for overflow we need to just find somewhere to take on those shoots. So I use a software called ManyChat that integrates with Facebook Messenger, and we run a Facebook ad just looking for photography contractors in Vancouver that are interested in being notified whenever new photography gigs come up. And then they're prompted to open in Facebook Messenger, and they go through an automatic sequence of interview questions, basically ask them for their portfolio, kind of their experience, just the basic deal breaker questions that if they do not meet these criteria, then we just would throw their resume away, basically. And if they don't meet any of their criteria as answering the questions, it will automatically unsubscribe them from the bot and tell them that they don't meet the criteria, and then they're not recorded. But if they do make it all the way through, they are automatically added into a Google Sheet, a database with all that information. They're tagged based on whatever they said there, so we can always filter them by that information as well. And then they're told more information too. They're kind of told they're given our onboarding document that just tells them a bit more about our company and how things work. And they're told that, hey, just stay tuned for the next photography gig. And then whenever we need these contractors for these shoots, we just send out a messenger broadcast to just people who are on this list with the details of the shoot and the schedule and everything, and ask them if they are available and want to do it. And if they say yes, then they're given just more details, and someone from our team is notified, and they can coordinate with all the people who answer yes. So it just filters out a ton of the 1, bad applicants, and 2, people who are good people but just are not available or not interested at that time. It just automates a ton of the process and makes it way easier for the administrative.
Yeah, and I think one of the big takeaways that I want people to get from this piece of the conversation is if you're looking to scale and grow your agency or your productized service business at all, you absolutely have to have a system built around hiring the contractors that are associated with some of the main fulfillment of the work that you're creating. So in my case, that was writers and editors for the previous business that I had. In Danny's case, for one of the packages that he offers, it's photographers. But if you don't have that, it's a mess. It's just a shit show. I can't imagine what that looked like for you before, but I'm sure it was a bit of a headache. So that's awesome, man. Congrats on getting that dialed in, and that's a huge takeaway for people. So maybe in the show notes or in a later episode, I can elaborate specifically on how to create a system like that. But that's something super important. What are so with regard to scale? So that's one thing that's obviously helped you guys become more efficient and grow. I mean, you don't have to give me exact metrics, but can you give me an idea of how big you guys are right now? How many customers do you have on recurring subscriptions or something like that? And how has that process been? And what are some of the biggest hurdles in terms of trying to grow more, or how much are you trying to grow?
That's a difficult number because, maybe the easiest is just revenue numbers. We're usually on a low month, somewhere around 40K, and on a good month, somewhere around 70K. Okay. Full-time employees, there is 6 currently, I believe, and we work with various contractors in between. But we're kind of a unique case where we do have some monthly recurring, but we do have most of the revenue of the business based in these one-time projects. And so our clients, they only need these one-time projects whenever they launch a new product, for example. So we're kind of on their schedule, which is a lot less predictable revenue. So that has definitely been a hurdle in scaling up. That's why we did start to get into the monthly recurring side of things, is that it is just more predictable and stackable. When you need to hire people becomes a lot more apparent if you have people on monthly retainer that you can, predict your revenue for the next month a lot better. And other than that, probably the biggest thing is just creating a really reliable lead generation tool. And there's a few things like SEO does fairly well for us, but probably the best one is using podcasting as a networking tool. So I just did a talk about this at a local co-working space the other week. But basically the strategy is I have a podcast called Actualize Freedom, about 55 episodes or so, and we just use that to reach out to people in our industry that it would make sense to have a strategic partnership with. We interview them, and people listen to the interview, and that's good lead generation too. But the real magic is the 5 or 10 minute conversation that happens after the podcast interview is over, is when these kind of strategic relationships, guest posting on their website or joining them for, a live webinar with their student group or something like that, getting them on as affiliate, all these kind of things, are very powerful. And some of these relationships are bring in a ton of business over a long period of time. So we just kind of use that to systematically reach out to these people and create relationships with people in our industry that can refer business to us, or in a variety of ways. The best way to collaborate with these people is whatever their best assets are. If they have a good blog, then maybe guest posting on their blog is the way to go. Some of them have a really big Facebook group, and they're constantly doing Facebook Lives with different people in the Facebook group. So that's what I would pitch to that person. But just having a systematized way of doing that on a regular basis has been the biggest driver for growth.
Dude, I love that. One of the things that I think you said that was really cool that people should pay attention to, obviously having a predictable lead generation system of some kind is really important, and there are a number of ways to do that. Podcasting, I think, is really great because there's that relationship factor that's going to create tons of referrals and other opportunities that are sort of evergreen. For example, if you get a blog post or a podcast on someone else's show and you're able to talk about and pitch your service, that stuff's going to stay there for a really long time. And I think one thing that people are sort of opposed to at the beginning, or at least I was, I always tried to figure out how to distance myself from the business so that I wasn't necessarily the face, because I always had the goal to sell it one day, which we did. But when you're building your initial customer base, that's all that matters, is once you have these customers on board, then you can worry about some of the other problems associated with removing your face from the business in order to sell it. But I think you're at you're at a very critical point with your revenue in terms of kind of making a big leap. And I don't know how long you've plateaued where you're at, but you seem to be at the point where it's okay, you've solved a lot of these issues. You've got a hiring system. You've got kind of basic lead gen in place, or a predictable system. What are you focused on right now? And what are your new problems in terms of getting over the hump with where you guys are at?
Kind of more immediate problems. The most key employee of the company, we're looking for a replacement right now. She actually quit right after payday. So that is something to deal with, but it did illuminate a lot of problems that we had with the hiring process for her. Is my mistake on hiring was I really overlooked a weakness in a part of the role that is really key that I didn't really realize was so key. She's really good at 70% of her role, but the other 30% was very weak at. So good hiring mistake learned there. The other thing that we're focusing on is diversifying the lead generation system. So I mentioned that whole process that I have right there that really does rely on me. Like you said there, to create a sellable business, I think it's a good idea to have something that does not rely on the one hero for the entire lead generation system. So we're working on getting an outbound lead generation system together. That's been coming together for the past couple months, and then
Are you guys doing
bringing
that
on
through email or through ManyChat or Facebook Messenger, or what are you doing?
it's a mix of email and LinkedIn.
Okay.
So yeah, we have a guy who's been helping us out with that, and he's still deciding on that, but he's probably going to be coming on full time as well to operate that system and do other marketing stuff. So that's another really big focus. And we need to replicate what I just mentioned with the photographers, also for the other areas of the business, for copywriters, for graphic designers, and other things. Just get that exact system I mentioned in place for them as well. Yeah, and really the focus after that is going to be a lot more on specific team members, like that one team member I just mentioned, who's the most important one, like the integrator, the operations manager, whatever you want to call them, who just keeps the ship running. That person has got to be super on point and like has to know the finest details of the business and just be really good at decision making and all that stuff. And just spending the time to find that super quality person and train them is going to be a lot of for the next 6 months as well, because that's the real linchpin that really keeps everything flowing smoothly without me. You know what I mean? It's like, because traditionally I've been that person, and I don't like being that person, and you cannot sell that business if the business owner is that person.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. And this is something that we've talked about in other episodes. But I mean, a lot of the risk inherent in someone purchasing a business, like if you're going to create a sellable asset, one thing that buyers are actually looking for is like, how connected is the owner to the day-to-day operations and the ultimate success of the business. We got asked that question on every single phone call we had as we were going through the buying process and entertaining offers. Everyone was interested in that. That was one of the main questions that we got. So definitely something to keep in mind. So let's talk about that a little bit more though. Like, what are your ultimate goals with the agency, and like, where do you see yourself kind of moving forward? I mean, I'm not one that has like 5 and 10 year goals. Usually set myself up in like 90-day sprints, but I always had in the back of my mind that I did want to sell the business that I created. Is that kind of a similar idea that you have?
I mean, funny enough, I've actually changed my answer to this within the last week. I did a lot of deep thinking, and the goal really always was to build it to that sellable point and just sell it off. But I actually have changed the kind of goal, the direction that I want to go with that. I basically want to turn it into, a clockwork business. Mike Michalowicz's great book, Clockwork, he's all about basically creating a business where you can walk away for an entire month and just have everything work perfectly smooth. And like, I'm pretty happy, honestly, with the amount of money I make right now. Like, I don't really, if I doubled the amount of money that I'm taking home, like, it wouldn't really do. Like, I'm already kind of doing stuff that I want to do and living the way I want to live. And so I realized that setting the goal of making, a 7-figure exit or whatever the hell that would be, is why would I want to do that when I could actually just create a business where I can free up a lot more of my time. And then from there, that gives me options too. If I decide at that point that I do want to go for a sale, then it is a much more sellable business anyways. But then I also have the option to, to extract my time from it and start working on another business or another project that I want to do more. So that's kind of a long-winded answer. Is like, I want to create a very systematized business that I can extract money from, but still have a lot of free time, so that I can just have more freedom, more options, basically, not necessarily grow at any cost and then sell.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, man, and I really appreciate that. And that's actually sort of the answer that I started having as well for my business. And then the opportunity to sell just sort of like came up and it felt like the right time for me. So I pulled the trigger on actually doing that. But at the end of the day, like if you're going to create, and Clockwork is a great book, by the way, I've read all of Mike's stuff and like just implemented that like crazy into what we did with Content Pros as much as we could. And Clockwork actually came out fairly recently. So that was something that we were like in the process of like really dialing in. But in any case, building a business so that you can sell it is ultimately the business that you would want to be running anyway. So thankfully, the way that my business was set up over the past 12 months before I ever sold it, I was really only meeting with the team once a week and wasn't really involved. So yeah, that's a really really good point. If you're going to build something that's worth buying, it's going to be something that's also worth running, and then you have options. So do you want to stay with this cash flowing asset, or if you get a really good offer, do you want to sell it? All right, cool, man. What about like any other things in terms of like big challenges that you guys are facing or stuff that you're looking forward to over the near term that's on the horizon? Because I know, yeah, maybe talk a little bit about like what's on your mind right now as some of the biggest things that you're focused on. You talked about some of the immediate like the immediate challenges being like how to hire key employees because you just lost one, how to diversify lead generation. Is there anything else?
There is another one, which is kind of financial systems. So, it, like, I have a Canadian company. I'm a Canadian citizen, but we take most of our revenue in American dollars, and I'm currently living in Indonesia. So, like, our kind of money flow is messy as all hell for bookkeepers, and also there's just so many accounts too, and like we use PayPal and Stripe for credit card processing, which are technically holding accounts as well. We have a mix of actual payroll and contractor payments that need to be confirmed and paid out. So it's just there's a whole lot of complexity there that just like is dumb admin work that I know can be systematized. That has just been a real challenge for us to systematize and streamline because it's just a whole mix of things that like one person, we doesn't really make sense at this point for us to hire a full-time finance person, but most contractors or like accountants out there, they don't do all of those things. They'll only do like one or two of them. And so that's the challenge that we're working through right now is how do we take all of that and just systematize it and get it, off my plate, because a lot of that stuff is done by myself.
Yeah, that's a really good one as well. Mike Michalowicz has a really good book called Profit First as well, which I know you've heard of, that helps talk about like how to organize your finances, which is really dope. But then again, I mean, there's stuff that you have to take into your own hands. I think one of the biggest things for me in my previous business was like we had a part-time financial assistant, and I built a spreadsheet. And I talked to Ben McAdam in one of the other interviews as well. For anyone watching this, that you could go back and check it out. But I built a basic spreadsheet that incorporated some of those profit first tax strategies into it. And then I had a financial assistant that would help me keep that updated real time on a regular weekly basis. That allowed me to get a better idea of like what was up. But then again, I mean, there's other things associated with being abroad, having different bank accounts, having Stripe, PayPal, like different ways that you're accepting payments. And I think I don't know. I mean, I think one of the things that happens like over time as you like set up some of these structures and you get these other things in place is that really starts to streamline as well. Like, and what I mean by that is like we used to accept payments of all different sorts also, but once we set up and really defined what we were offering in terms of our monthly productized service that Content Pros ultimately became, like we only took recurring payments by credit card through Stripe. So we didn't even deal with like bank transfers or PayPal anymore. We just decided to only take them through one. And like in terms of setting up your business to operate in a way that's less reactive, setting up that expectation and just telling people, kind of like Danny was talking about earlier, like, look, this is how we accept payments. Like if you can't pay that way, then like, I'm sorry, we can't take your money. And ultimately over time, that definitely like ends up benefiting you.
Yeah, it may seem counterintuitive to turn people's money away, but there's a lot of situations too where it absolutely is better for you to not take someone's money. And that's been a big learning lesson as well in the past couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's a huge one. And it's like, it's tough to get used to, but it definitely helps you kind of get to the next level. All right, cool. So just to kind of like wrap up, like two of the things that you have dialed in for your business. Well, it seems like, I mean, you've gotten to this level where you're making between 40 and 70K a month. You're doing pretty good. Things are stable. You know, you're definitely making enough money to support yourself. Way more than enough money to support yourself, living in Bali and do all the things that you want to do. You've gotten a hiring system set up. You've got a decent lead generation system set up. It seems like you've got some key employees hired. You've got basic financial systems in place, and you've also already set up packages associated with your service offering. So those are 5 major things that I've identified through our conversation that you've done to get to this point now. Like, could you just kind of like sum up for anyone that's like new to starting a productized service, or maybe just a little behind where you are right now, like anything that I'm leaving out that you think it's important for them to focus on first? Because I think what people really struggle with is like, I mean, you've done all these things, you've got them all in place, but like, what do I do first? Like, what should I really focus on? Like, does that depend on my situation? Like, that's a question that I get a lot.
I mean, I think it really just starts with systematization, standard operating procedures, and just getting the real core ones of the business, like written out and recorded somewhere. So like for us, that was like, how do you actually create these product photography packages? For example, like what is the process? Step 1, you have to do this. Step 2, this, and then get sent off to whatever photo editors for this step, and just like having that really well defined and recorded somewhere, like the actual fulfillment of each one of your services. And that's something that your life becomes an absolute nightmare if these documents don't exist and they only exist in your brain or the brain of your key employees. Because, you know, I've lived through where, you know, our lead photographer, they quit, and then along with a lot of their knowledge and how they're doing things and everything, just like it was gone. It's like I didn't even have the chance to extract it before they're gone, right? And so just getting the real core, like what does it take to deliver to your clients, getting that all really refined and on paper somewhere, I think is one of the most important starting places for sure.
Yeah, I think I agree, man, because even if you're just starting out or even if you've already started, I can remember days where like we couldn't scale past 5 or 8 clients even because we didn't have like the delivery set up in such a way that like that whole process was efficient and effectively outsourced to the team. There were other people doing the work. It just wasn't managed in such a way that we could take on more customers. So one of the pieces of software that I recommended to Danny that really helped us, and I think can basically create a box in which you only have like these strict guidelines to which you can operate within, is called serviceproviderpro.com. And that sort of gives you a good framework in terms of how you can deliver these services. And then you can build your system around that and only use that in order to actually deliver. And it'll help you think a bit more clearly about how you could actually do that at a bit more scale. Because I don't know about you, but for us, you know, I remember, you know, we had 4 or 5 customers, we had 10 recurring customers, and then at each level until we got to 50, we hit different plateaus, and 50 is where we got to by the time we sold the business. But it was a different challenge at every point, and a huge part of that was based on what you just said. So I do think that's pretty critical to do initially.
Yeah, that software, I would echo that. Like we are just getting set up on that now, and like all of our newer orders have been coming through there, and it is streamlined what we do a lot, because before then, everything from like making the sale to communication with the clients to the team tracking deliverables and stuff was spread across, I think, 3 different softwares, and it became very complex. Like it worked well when we were only serving a small amount of clients. But, once we have, 20 open orders, like 20, 30 open projects running at the same time, it just turned into a freaking nightmare, just hopping between softwares and information spread over different places. And it just created all sorts of communication nightmares. That it was a big job for the integrator to actually keep tabs on all this stuff, and it just opened up opportunities for so many mistakes. In SPP, Service Provider Pro, it just keeps everything all in one place, keeps it very simple. You don't have the option to add very much complexity, which I think is a big plus, because we added so much complexity into our task management software because it does allow for it, and we wanted to get things super automated and blah, 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 but it ended up just becoming way too much complexity. And it's good to come back to the simplicity.
Nice, man. Yeah, no, I totally agree. That changed the game for us, and I hope that continues to work well for you guys. And, if you have any questions about that, definitely let me know, man. We definitely got set up in there, and there's a lot of people in this group as well that use SPP, or maybe there are some that haven't heard of it yet that hopefully will. But I think I'm gonna stop there. There's a lot to chew on for people. There's a lot of further discussion that we could have on some of the topics that we broke down. But thank you, man. I really appreciate your time. This is super, super valuable and very, very relevant to the type of businesses that everyone's working on in here.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Tommy. It's always good to jam with you on these kind of nerdy business subjects.
Oh yeah, bro. Well, Danny, dude, much love, man. Continue holding it down in Bali for us. Thank you again. And we will talk to you soon, bro.
Awesome. Cheers, guys. Thanks for listening.